Being free-to-play is one of the most difficult decisions that you can ever make in Wuthering Waves, because Kuro always finds a way to get you attached to new units ranging from splendid character designs, addictive gameplay, and companion quests that adds more depth to a particular character. But not everyone is capable of spending hundreds of dollars every patch on a new banner to obtain the characters that they prefer. So if you're free-to-play or a low spender, you need to have a game plan or strategy in mind whenever you decide to pull for limited characters, and a little bit of luck because you're going to need it for the 50-50. These kinds of videos usually involve making sure that you do your dailies, exploration, completing milestones if you're a beginner, doing events, Tower of Adversity, Whimpering Waste, and holograms to claim those astrides as reward. But let's be honest, the astrides and radiant ties that you get on average every patch from doing those in-game activities, according to Wuthering Waves Bookkeeping, link will be in the description, sum up to about 100 pulls, excluding the free lustrous ties and forging ties that you get every patch, which is not even enough to guarantee one limited character if you lose the 50-50. So instead of reminding you to do event, holograms, etc., let's dive deeper into how you can actually build the best free-to-play account as a beginner or a veteran that can crush any endgame content for many patches to come. The first step is to prioritize universal buffers. What I mean by universal buffers is characters that you can literally slap on any team that you can possibly build in the future, like Verena and Showkeeper. But how exactly can you identify these universal buffers in the future, and what makes Showkeeper and Verena must-pull characters in Wuthering Waves? And the answer is the all-type damage amplification from the outro skills. In case you're not familiar with outro skills, every character has this gauge right here that you need to fill by simply doing damage to an enemy. When it's full, swapping to another character will activate a dramatic entrance, and you'll see this icon on top of the on-field character's health bar indicating that they have obtained the outro buff. For Verena and Showkeeper, they have the ability to amplify any type of damage your teammates do by 15%, in addition to sustained capabilities like healing and other buffing capabilities like attack, crit rate, and crit damage. Don't let the 15% fool you, because damage amplification buffs are the most superior types of buffs in Wuthering Waves. That increases your damage quite significantly, and it's not that common to obtain compared to other offensive stats like crit rate, crit damage, attack, and damage bonuses that you can get on echoes. Luckily, the game provides you with the new Voyage Resonator Convene banner for beginners, mainly as a way to secure Showkeeper, so make her your top priority if you don't have her on your account. For Verena, you can always use your free 5-star selector or the lustrous ties that you're given at the start of the game to guarantee her on the beginner's choice convene banner. But do keep in mind that characters that provide universal buffs may not always be sustained focused units like Verena and Showkeeper, who does not contribute significantly to your team's overall damage output. A close example is Chacona, who can provide up to 39% error damage bonus to any error DPS character that you decide to pair her with, and her damage output is also very decent even at S0, but she's limited to error DPS units to make the most out of her buffing capabilities. So while we do not have main damage dealers, hybrids, and sub-DPS buffers that provide universal damage amplification effects, Chacona's kit design suggests that there is a high chance that we might get main damage dealers, hybrids, or even sub-DPS buffers that can provide universal damage amplification effects. So for example, if Augusta and Yuno turns out to be hybrid units with decent damage outputs and the ability to provide universal damage amplification effects from passives like Chacona's or from outro skills like Showkeeper and Verena, don't think twice about pulling for them as a free-to-play, because such characters can save you the trouble of spending additional astrides to secure dedicated sub-DPS buffers with restrictive outro skills like Yinlin's, for example, that amplify specific stats like Liberation and Electro damage for DPS units that you might pull in the future. The second tip is to prioritize characters that you enjoy playing. It is pretty common for players to be victims of the fear of missing out, or FOMO for short, especially when new DPS units that paragroups old ones show up on the roster. But don't fall into the temptation of using your hard-earned astrides as a free-to-play or low spender to pull on a banner simply because that particular character is broken than the last one. Take it from a creator like myself who possess every character in the game but barely use Zani, Carlotta, and Cartethia in the overworld. Tower of Adversity, or even when doing Whimper and Waste. If you've ever hopped on one of my streams on Twitch or YouTube, I try to stream every weekend by the way, you'll see that the character that I enjoy playing and will stay that way for a long time is Chun-Li, mainly because her playstyle gives room for skill expression due to her mid-air combos and long animations that makes quick swapping much easier and fun to play. But this is purely subjective because games that I usually played before I picked up my first gacha game, which was Genshin Impact from 2 years ago, was Souls-like titles like Sekiro and Bloodborne. So as a free-to-play, focus on finding a reason that will allow you to play a specific DPS unit for the longest possible time, ranging from gameplay to aesthetics, to help you properly budget your resources. After making that decision, you need to plan your team building around your favorite accordingly, which leads us to not sleeping on your 4-star characters. There's a reason we haven't received that many 4 stars, and it's due to the simple fact that we have enough to pair with many DPS units that you can possibly think of. For damage amplification, which we've already established as far superior among damage buffs, we have Sanwa for basic attack amplification, Mortefi for heavy attack amplification, and Taochi Lumi for resonance skill damage amplification. For resonance liberation damage amplification, you can use Zheng Zhen, who is not a 4-star character, but she's easily accessible if you usually lose your 50-50. Another 4-star worth mentioning is the Honored One herself, who amplifies Havoc damage by 23%, making her a staple buffer for any Havoc damage dealer like Frolova and Camellia. So as long as the DPS units that you pull for does not depend on negative status effects like Spectrofrazzle application from another character to do damage, you're guaranteed a 4-star or 5-star option to always form their easily accessible team composition. With team building out of the way, you need to consider investing in weapons with universal benefits. In Wuthering Waves, 2 5-star standard weapons are considered must-have weapons for free-to-play, including Emerald of Genesis and Static Mist, because they both have crit rate as their substats with a high base attack as well, and crit rate is required by any DPS unit regardless of the stats that they primarily depend on for doing damage, like attack and HP for example. That means that as a free-to-play or low spender, you should be dumping those lustrous ties that you usually get for free on these weapon banners. This makes it easier to spend your hard-earned astrites on other weapon classes like Broadblades, Gauntlets, and Rectifiers that also have crit rate substats like Stringmaster, Aegis of Harvest, and Verity's Handle. For your 5-star sub-DPS buffers like Yinlin, Zheji, and Cantarella, who will most likely be at S0 with low damage output for a free-to-play player or low spender's account, any 5-star weapon on the standard banner will do just fine. But to prevent competition with your main damage dealers in case they share the same weapon type, prioritize 4-star weapons of all classes with the Intergalactic Gaze passive skill. These 4-star weapons provides energy regen and attack buffs upon casting a resonance skill, so it focuses mainly on allowing your sub-DPS buffers to always use their liberation every rotation and do a little bit of damage. The next thing we need to cover is planning for your DPS character's weaknesses. Every character has pros and cons. Before dumping astrites into a character, you need to ask yourself what exactly can fix this unit's weaknesses. For example, Carlotta makes up for her height issues by being one of the most broken single-target damage dealers that we have in the game, but in multi-wave content like Whimper and Waste, she will not perform very well like Jian and Zhang Liao, who have low damage output compared to Carlotta. Since you are limited in terms of characters that you have on your roster compared to those that have every character in the game, to demolish Whimper and Waste, you can plan ahead by pulling for characters like Cantarella, who's good at preventing enemies from splitting up easily while buffing Carlotta at the same time with their Ultra skill, or getting a hybrid unit like Brand to deal consistent AoE damage with Carlotta while buffing Carlotta at the same time with his Ultra skill. If its overall damage output that your preferred DPS unit like Jian lacks, then be ready to pull for sub-DPS buffers or hybrids in the future that offer better buffing capabilities compared to Mortefi. The last tip we need to cover is mastering mechanics, understanding buffs, and executing better rotations. Remember that the game gets harder gradually with new buffs and enemies in endgame that favor characters that you may not have on your account. As a free-to-play or low spender, you'll often be running less than ideal builds and team compositions compared to those that can afford to spend hundreds of dollars on every banner, so learning the game's mechanics and rotations is crucial. This particular topic demands a whole separate video, but to give you a brief example, some characters like Mortefi and Jengzin are not good at building concerto energy without special weapons like Cadenza and Marcato, so they spend considerably more time on the field. For Mortefi, this can easily be fixed by simply swapping to him to start his basic attack chain from stage 3 up to stage 4, which generates more concerto energy. The same thing applies to Jengzin as well to regenerate more concerto energy and outro quickly from the field. You don't need sweaty rotations or 15 fingers to be able to do this. Just executing one simple swap to Mortefi to start his basic attacks from stage 3 up to stage 4 much quicker before you outro from him and intro to your main damage dealer is better for your team's overall damage output than not doing anything at all, since you don't waste time always spamming basic attacks from stage 1. Keep in mind that Wuthering Waves is one of the few gacha games where getting a better understanding of how your units can function properly can help compensate for not having the most expensive and strongest builds, so be sure to take full advantage of that as much as you can. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you found the video helpful or informative. Our community Discord link will be in the pinned comment, so be sure to join us if you're having any issues with the game or you just want a place to chill or hang out. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.